Hello everyone, welcome back to Where Love Touches People. It's February now, and love is in the air. You know what month is it, Andrew?
Yeah, like you said, it's February.
Yep. And you know what occasion we do have in February?
Chinese New Year.
That's right. But I would like to focus on another thing, which is pretty much equally important to Chinese New Year.
Is it really equally important?
I guess so, for me, yeah. So it is Valentine's Day month. So prior to this podcast recording, we have asked our teens on what they're curious about around love and dating. And now, just right next to us, we have the expert of 8 years of dating, love and marriage experience. Mm-hmm. Welcome, Chitiska. Woo!
Hey guys.
It's good to have you here, Titis.
Well, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, our pleasure. Yeah, really happy to have you here with us. We've been meaning to get you on our podcast for a while now. Hey, it's good that you're here with us because you do have quite a number of years of experience in a relationship with Bang Sangam, yeah? Mm-hmm. 8 years, was it?
8 years total, I guess now, yeah.
Right. So how do you feel so far about it, about your relationship?
So far, I guess you can call it as so far so good. I've been totally blessed with Sangam in the sense that we're probably one of the very few people you'd know as a couple that don't necessarily fight all the time. In fact, we probably fight really rarely. And if it does, it's probably just comes down to some basic emotions, or I call it down to some female hormones.
Okay.
Oh my.
I can relate to that one. It's come monthly.
Yeah, I better learn then.
Yes,
you should.
Very important lesson.
Yeah. So maybe would you like to tell us, I guess, how you guys got together?
Sure. So I've obviously been in Brisbane for a long time. Many of you know that. Sangam came to Brisbane and he actually saw me way before I ever really noticed him. He came to an event that we co-host together with other churches, and there were bands from Indonesia and teams from other churches and overseas that came, and we actually did a bit of a Congo dance to David's dance, and he noticed me there because for some unknown reason I got bullied to being at the front of the Congo line.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome! I wish I was there.
I didn't know that at the time, but that was apparently the first time he saw me. And then fast forward about a year after he's been living in his dark days of playing games with his mates. He actually came to church on one of our Christmas celebrations. One of the ladies in the church at the time actually used to be in a choir with him. So then she invited him to come, and that was then the second time he saw me, and I was leading worship at that time. And then fast forward another year after that, he committed himself to the church, and I saw that he had talent in music. And at that time, I was actually looking after the secretariat position in the church, which included inviting newcomers and actually holding a newcomer gathering, ensuring all the newcomers actually meet Pastor Hani, seeing and understanding what the vision of the church is. And he was there, and that was the beginning of it, I guess. And he introduced himself to me, and I was like, oh yeah, I know who you are by now. So yeah, that's how we first sort of met together. And by the end of that year, he ended up being chosen to lead Christmas.
Yep.
So within that 1 year. And during that time, I believe, and you're going to have to ask him on this, is when he started having feelings towards me. And that's, I guess, is the start of the journey for us.
Oh my, that's awesome.
Sounds lovely, doesn't it, Andrew?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm still curious how he started asking you to be his date.
Well, I guess during the 2011, so he was Christmas later in 2010. He didn't say anything to me.
Is it like a push and pull
2011.
sort of?
Actually, it wasn't anything like it. We actually didn't talk much at all until 2011. What became the starter for it all was when I found out that my housemate at the time, who was the multimedia leader, had to leave to go back to Indonesia due to her visa. And she had 1 month, and then she wanted to spend about a week of that 1 month in Melbourne with my sister. So she left me with a bit of instructions going, go meet Sangam because I want him to replace me. And so during that week, I contacted him going, hey, I kind of got told to catch up with you. And because at that time he was really busy at work, like doing long hours, the only time he had was on a Saturday night, believe it or not. And it was supposed to be after his gym time. So he just said, oh, let's meet up at Sunnybank and we'll get into one car and go. And we ended up at Three Monkeys that night, and and everyone
I love
knows.
Three Monkeys. My favorite iced chocolate. Iced chocolate.
Iced that hot.
It is actually really good. Normally the chai there is really good as well. Yeah. So and back then there wasn't a lot of places you can hang out like quite late. So that was one of the go-to places for us, right, in Brisbane. And we ended up staying there and chatting really, really late. And I mean, he was ministering the next day. But that's what started it all, and from there is when the conversation started. Unfortunately, I decided to leave Australia, and within a couple of weeks of that happening, he tried telling and expressing that he liked me, but he tried doing it in the car as I was dropping him off home, and he already knew I was leaving Australia within a month, and so my first reaction to him was, that's nice.
Oh my God. Oh no.
So, and I just kind of left him with that.
Yeah.
So you left Australia afterwards. For how long?
For about 6 months. So I went and joined
YWAM was it?
YWAM, to the States. And, so I said, look, I'm leaving. There is no guarantee I would be coming back. That YWAM period was one of my awesome attempt at leaving Brisbane, which didn't work, obviously. So by the time I got back, obviously I had my flight returned back to Brisbane. And during that 6 months time, he never stopped contacting me, no matter where I was in the world. He'll keep dropping me messages, whether it's by email or at that time it was is it Voxbox or something like that? So it's like one of those ones. It's like a messaging service, so it's like leaving a voicemail for someone, but not directly via phone number. So he kept in touch with me throughout the entire time. But I did say to him, I may not come back because I actually wanted to run away to Melbourne at that stage. And I said, if I get a job in Melbourne, it's sayonara. I'm not staying in Brisbane. Yeah. But so obviously God had other plans in mind because we're both still here.
Yep.
That's very interesting.
So after that you came back and you started dating, was it?
So I got back at the end of 2011, was looking for jobs, and it was one of those weird moments where I used my sister's Melbourne address to try and find jobs, and I got no interviews even. And then it got to the point where he was working on a project and he was really busy, and he called me one Friday afternoon going, hey, do you want a temporary job? I was like, what's the job? And he's like, it's kind of like an admin job. It's just helping me out with the projects, but it'd probably be like about 6 weeks. And I was like, why not? And he's like, okay, email me your resume. So I emailed it to him Friday afternoon, and he just said, okay, you're coming to work on Monday. No interview, nothing.
Love it.
So, and that kept on going for a few weeks, obviously. And then, January 2012, he took me out for dinner, at Eagle Street. And his famous statements around it always says that, he's an engineer by trade, so there is always a risk that he will have to either move or be on the move, fly in, fly out sort of situation. And he just asked whether or not I had a problem with it, otherwise he'd like to take the relationship to the next level. And I just said, well, if it's risky, I'm willing to take the risk, as long as obviously the main focus is obviously to get to know each other. And obviously having God as a center of our relationship too.
Wow. That's great. It's really interesting to hear that because it's so rare for you to like asking someone out and then just like tell the list of like the risks of dating him. So yeah, it's typically Bang Sangam.
Oh my goodness. But I guess when you mention it that way, it seems that the both of you have some form of expectation in that dating relationship, was it?
Yeah, I guess so. And I think it was partly because we were a little bit more mature at that time, you know. We're looking back at 2012 and I would have been 24, so it's not like it was a high school sort of lover situation, you know, lovey-dovey situation, nor was it just, you know, outside of high school sort of situation.
Yes, sort of like a more serious relationship they're looking for, I guess.
Yeah, in a sense we knew that we were both looking for something that's more serious, and it wasn't just going to be a game.
Yep. Wow.
At least we now know the background of her, the beginning of her love story. Now we have like a list of few questions that we got from our teens.
Yeah. So we did ask the teens to submit some questions about dating. Of course, it's going to be a bit different from your story with Bang Sangam. You know, they're in high school. You know, it's probably going to be their first relationship, or first couple of relationships with people that they like. You know, young lovebirds. But maybe you can share some insight, if you don't mind.
Sure. I mean, I had a period in life where I tried to date when I was in high school. I think looking at some of the questionnaire answers from the teens, and yes, I did get a bit of a preview. Some of them actually stated that they're not allowed to date. And I actually found myself, I was in a similar situation, and I think the rule of thumb still remains the same with my parents to all of my siblings. And for myself, like, I think at the time I just had, I want like a push that I kind of want to push the boundary, going like, what would it do for me? It wasn't ever explained to me as to why. It was just like, you're too young. That's it. High school. What is it? High school lovers. What does that even mean? That doesn't exist. That sort of attitude towards it all. And I think for myself personally, now years on down the track, I can see the reason why, and I just wish that perhaps it gets communicated a little bit more clearly. And for the teens that are out there that are questioning, can I date or should I date? Ask the question of what is the purpose of you wanting to date? Why is it that you feel the need and the push? I myself felt like it was more like a peer pressure because everyone around me seems to be dating. And I was like, what does it feel like? I was curious, but with age comes maturity, comes understanding that it's not just a game. And it goes beyond that. And I think it's something that as we were teenagers, perhaps we always like to overlook, perhaps just simply because of our hormonal raging everywhere. And I think it's important that we do actually always come back to the basics of what is the purpose, why do you want to do that? And if the purpose really is just because you're curious because everyone else is doing it, then perhaps take another step back and go, what are the outcomes of those people that are dating around you? And I can assure you plenty of those will probably end up in quite a few disasters and dramas. Probably be like K-drama in high school at the moment too.
I can relate. So if like you personally, like when you have like a teenager in a few years, like 10 years from now, 15 years from now, will you like try to communicate it more clearly, like about
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing I've learned is trying to communicate, where you're putting boundaries and why that is. I must admit, I may not necessarily be the best person at doing that. I think Sangam actually does a much better way of communicating those, I find at times. So it may well be that he does take a lot of that responsibility of making that hard conversations. But I think as a natural position of a mother being a nurturing side, I find that if you have a nurturing relationship with your kids or your children, then you can have that sort of friend mentality and go, trust me, know that I'm not doing this because I've got nothing better to do, and telling you not to date is just my purpose in life, but rather I have a purpose. I'm trying to protect you. I'm trying to tell you that many of these relationships don't come to fruition for a variety of reasons. And many people actually still don't know what they want to do in life when they're in high school. And if you're dating in that situation, what will come of it? You know, so yeah, just communication I find would be key. And it won't be easy, I'm sure. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
So one of the questions that they asked is, when is the appropriate age to start dating then? If that's like, because you did mention that it's important to think about the purpose and why they want to start dating. So when is a good time to start dating?
Personally, and this is a personal call, I don't think that there is actually a straight rule for it. I do find that if you're actually at uni, it would be the best time, because I find that uni time is the time where you are free, so you are not as required to adhere to a schedule as when you were in high school, because obviously high school is like you're there 8 to 5 or 8 till 3:30 or whatever, Monday to Friday. And unis, you have a bit more free time. And unis, you get to see, you know, what the other person is up to. What are they studying? Are they actually performing well in that studies? I find that when you're in high school, it can be a little bit too young, because everyone has to get through high school. It's, you know, and we're in Australia. High school is standard. Absolute standard. If you're not passing high school, it's like, what are you going to do next in life, right? So, I think that is the reason why I believe that at high school is a little bit too young. Once you get hit at like university, you can start seeing, you know, the individuals making their choices at university, whether or not they're excelling at their studies, or perhaps they're not doing so well, but then you see, what did they do? What do they decide to do? How do they tackle that issue? And I think that's important, because then you get to see a person's characteristics outside of what perhaps they show you when they take you out on a date.
Yeah, I think when you said that like uni is a good time to start dating, I don't know if it was the right time for me.
Maybe.
Because
did you date during high school?
No, not in high school.
No,
So you're asking an opinion on your...
No, like I'm just thinking, I think because guys, we tend to be
A little bit
more childish.
slower.
Like I remember, okay, when I was doing my bachelor, I was still a kid.
Yeah.
And no way was I ready for like to look after another person kind of thing. Yeah, so there might be some gender differences in that sense as well. Hey,
That's so different to me. Like when I'm in high school, I thought myself was already a young adult. Probably.
That's a female thing, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, you always look up to people. And don't forget, when I say, you know, university, it's like, well, I'd be seeing myself as a first year or a second year uni. Majority of the people you date tend to be, and I say majority, you look up, you know, as a female, you want to look up to a guy that's a little bit older, right? So you'd be looking at a guy that's a year or two ahead of you, or perhaps they're even doing, you know, a second degree or whatever it might be. So I think the maturity level, like you said, would come into it as well. There were quite a handful of them. They were quite mature, I find, when I was at first or second year uni. Yeah. But definitely not a majority.
So following Andrew's statement, I want to ask you, how do you know when you want to be with someone else? Like when you're ready to be in a relationship
with someone? Yeah. I think if I take a step back from that question, it's important to understand that we are relational human beings in the sense that there is always a side of us that require some sort of form of relationship. And so no matter what stage in life we are in, I think we do need to have a relationship with other people, you know, whether it be with our family at that time or just with mates or friends that are close to us. But I think when you get, like Andrew said, you know, if he felt like he wasn't really ready when he was doing his bachelor's degree to sort of be dating, he felt like he was a little bit too young, or maybe, if I can use the word, immature, not quite ready yet. You know, I think there's a certain point in life where you can see where you're heading in life in terms of your personal goals, you know. Each and every one of us have aspirations, so you're finishing your uni perhaps, and you can see a bit of a pathway for a career for yourself, and you can also then start seeing, what has God actually spoke to you about yourself personally. And when I say that, I mean, are you a type of person that is being called to speak truth to other people? Are you the type of person that's actually being used by God to encourage other people by words, or are you the type of person that actually know to sacrifice themselves? Whether it's your time, your money, whatever it is. And I think at that certain point in time, then that maturity will come in, and at that point you would begin to understand. Okay, I need another person who will be able to compliment me in a way that would make me a better person, in whatever way that might be. And I'll give you an example. I think when I started thinking that I was ready to date or ready to take a relationship to the next level, it took a little while, but God had actually taught me a very harsh lesson for myself personally, in that I needed to learn on how to actually humble myself. I know that I was I guess you want to say an independent, and I'd like to think of myself as quite smart. I'm not dumb. I finished high school very early, at 16. So I finished my bachelor's by 19. I had actually nearly completed my master's by 21, but I slowed that down because I thought, who on earth in this world has a master's degree at 21? So I knew that I was intelligent, but then I had a lot of pride that come with that. And so it took a few years for God to mold me back and actually teach me how to humble myself, because as the years go by, and Pastor Hani teaches a lot about this at church, on the different roles of being a husband and a wife, and that when you're entering a relationship, you want to ultimately become husband and wife. And when you're in that mindset, and then you're working towards that, then you also know that as a wife, we are to submit ourselves to our husband. And at the time, to begin with, I wouldn't know how to submit to a husband. I'd be like, I'm the boss.
Yeah.
And I must admit, the definition of that boss is probably not the same as what it was 10 years ago for myself. But I've learned along the way on how to respect a man, and I've also learned seeing other people, other men grow up, seeing how respect is what they need. As soon as you disrespect a man, I find that they dysfunction. And so for myself personally, it's learning then how to humble myself, and learning that I am a woman who is strong enough, but then I also know that I need to respect my man. And that's the point where I find that I knew I would be in a better position to actually be in a relationship. So there's no golden key or, checklist, I guess. But I find that if you're in a point in time in your life and you realize, you have a part to play in a relationship, what does that part look like? And you then know what you're looking for as well on your partner on the other side of it.
Yeah, I heard about this before, about how you're not finding the perfect person, but you're making a perfect relationship together with the other person. That's something I'm seeing from what Chitiska have been sharing to us. And I also very interested to know whether you prayed to God when you are accepting the relationship with Bang Sangam. Did you pray before about this?
I think I started praying way before he asked.
Wow.
I started praying not long after that conversation at Three Monkeys.
Wow.
Because I very quickly found myself actually looking over this guy again and again, because I think previous to that I was kind of this guy plays at church, week in and week out, so what? But then as soon as I kind of say, hang on a minute, there's a little bit more to this guy, there's a bit of mystery to it, there's something extra to him, and then that's when I start asking God, And I also learned over time to be open with my family. So quite early on, I did actually drop hints to my parents. So I actually did it while I was away. I was still in the States, and I told my parents, look, there is a guy that's been trying to get close to me. I did say to him, I'm going overseas. I might not even come back to Brisbane, but he keeps contacting me. He hasn't stopped at all during this time. And my parents just said, okay, well, we'll pray, as well and see how it goes. And, one of the prayers I did pray, I said, God, if this is not your will, get me out of Brisbane. Get me out of Brisbane. So yeah, absolutely. Prayer is absolutely key to it, especially if you know that you're ready, to actually take that relationship to the next level, because you do want God confirming, whether this is the right person for you to be able to spend the rest of your life with, It's no joke. It's the rest of your life with. Mm-hmm.
There was a question that I wanted to ask, I guess, in relation to, I guess what you've been talking about, right? Like if you know yourself as you mature, then you know what to look for in a partner. I know that you said you don't have like a checklist, but were the things that complemented you from Bang Sangam, for example, did you find them attractive in a sense, or?
Attractive would be probably wouldn't necessarily be the word I'd use. I had a personality test that had been done while we were doing a bit of a training at church, and then there was a slightly different one that I did for work. And I find that people always comment that there'll be a certain kind of opposite where people tend to say opposite attracts, where that would then ring true for us, in the sense that, you tend to find couples that are, one that would be completely, structural and bossy and an action type person. You've got a list of A, B, C you got to get through. While the other partner, you'll find that they're so laid back, they're so chilled, church starts at 9, they'll still be trying to get out of the driveway at 9, or where the partner is like, come on, we can't be late, we can't be late. But yeah, I guess in the sense that there will be parts there that you will find, and things like, with Sangam, he's quite the chilled one normally, and I'm more of the planner, but then with our differences, I think that we've learned over time on how to complement each other with it as well. In the sense that if I'm planning, I don't also exclude him out of that. It may mean that I come to him and say, so, by the way, this week we are meeting so-and-so on Monday, so-and-so Tuesday. I got podcast recording on Wednesday. Or, I've got another meeting for Thursday and practice on this day. Did I miss something? Was there a plan that you had that I hadn't considered in there? Yeah. And if the plan's coming, into the different slots, you kind of then ask, do you need the car or do I need the car? Because we only have one car between the two of us, and just like communication is, I think, key there, to then try and work around it. So that's how we ensure that our differences, I think, work together to complement each other.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What's interesting about like dating, I guess, in the setting of the teens, some people have the sentiment that, okay, like if I'm going to date this person, I want to date this person like long term, from high school, all the way to uni until they get married. But most times, I guess, most relationships don't end up like that. So I guess it's a bit challenging to decide, okay, like let's say, if I'm interested in this person, should I start dating him or her? Kind of thing. It's like, how would you advise?
If I compile all of my bad decisions, perhaps, that I've done in the past, what I would be telling any teens, any young adults would be to always, number one, ask God. Because if you're only going into this relationship based on your feelings, that feeling is not going to last, because you will sooner or later find the hard way that the commitment's going to take more than just feelings, and that feeling is going to burn out quite quickly. And so if you ask God on what the purpose of that relationship will be, then God can have a say in it and lead you whichever way. And number 2 would be involve your parents over it. Because a blessing from your parents for that relationship will go a long way. Many parents don't want their kids to date too young because, perhaps it's the simplest reasonings, like you're just too young. And maybe they haven't explained it too well, why am I too young, but I'm ready. You make me do chores at home. You make me mow. You make me cook and whatnot.
Yeah.
But there is a certain maturity level, I suppose, that you do need to actually be able to carry on the commitment of being in a relationship. So yeah, I would do that. And number 3, I wouldn't say this being the least of all, but I think it'll be on par at least with number 2, is to check with your friends, your good mates around you. Because if you cannot be in a relationship or dating with someone and have your friends agree and friends actually get to know who you're dating, I tend to find that wouldn't go so well either, whether or not it'll take weeks or months. Yeah, so
that's a good advice. Like, I never thought about that before because I thought my relationship, it's about me. That's about how I feel. I never thought about maybe a bit about family, but not so much about friends. So it's a really good advice for us, and especially for you, Andrew. Because you asked this, right?
She's already in a relationship.
Yeah.
You're the only one next.
Oh my goodness.
I think it is important because I think that was a commitment as well that we both made when we started dating. We committed ourselves not to disappear from this community, meaning that we're not just going to disappear and have like a date on our own every night, every day or every night. But instead, during the time where we were dating, you would actually find us spending so much time with everyone else. We'll go on the occasional dinner for the 2 of us, but that is the occasional, not the everyday item. And the rest of every day is actually hanging out with friends. And I find that was really, really helpful in terms of the relationship, making sure that everyone around me, get to know him as well and who he is. And I'm not just saying church friends, I'm saying outside of my church friends, I've made him get to know them as well, meet them, who they are. So they get to know him too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's really good advice.
Quick question, Chi. There's one question from the teens. Should the guy split bill when they're going on a date? Just a quick answer.
The split bill. I'm a romantic, so I always love it when the guy actually pick up the bill.
Of course.
That's a given.
Thank you for agreeing. Mind you, there are exceptions. Obviously, I think if it's after the first date and whatnot, I don't see that the guy has to pick up the bill every date. But I think seeing the gesture is always nice. And I'm a romantic.
Probably like in a big occasion like Valentine's Day and maybe Christmas and others. But probably if like every week, it's a bit hard for the pocket.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's very hard for the wallet, yeah.
Exactly. And we understand that. We live in the 21st century, and we get that. So it's not like we demand that, but I still like seeing that. So I still tell the boys that actually hang around us, you're picking up the bill if you're taking a girl out.
So you did mention that, like, it's a nice gesture that for the guy to pick up the bill. But what exactly is like the role of the guy and the girl, like in a relationship?
I think it's important that they both actually get to know each other. When you say about roles in the dating sense, I used to always focus on what will end up being the role after dating, because dating it can be quite short, and once you say I do, it's a much longer period of time. Yep. And I tend to always go back to the scripture on that, in that what are men actually they're created for. So I do believe that the man is always there to lead. So maybe that's me personally, but I find men who cannot lead unattractive in so many ways. And being a man, have to be a person who are decisive as well. because if not, then you are going to struggle to lead. And as a man, I think the demand today is still that you are to provide for the family, to protect for the family. Last but not least, is to ensure that they act as the priest, to ensure that the entire family actually brings you closer to God. So, but then I don't believe that is the sole responsibility of the men. I do also believe that the woman is there to help and support the men. Obviously, as the man protects the women, the woman should then also act as a person who will support and endeavor to do anything she can in order to reach the common dream or goal between the two of them. And I also believe that in today's society, we have men, women working in the family all the time. Like, Sangam and I both work, so, just like I don't tend to expect the guy to pick up the bill every time when they go out on a date. I do think that the female there will be more than happy to chip in as well, and say, hey, I can take that lunch or that dinner for you as well. I think there isn't one being better than the other. I do believe that they both need to complement each other, but it is important to then also ensure that whoever you are with, that you do end up becoming a better person than when you were a single person. And I think that's important to look out for. Make sure that you become a better person.
Yep.
Now you understand, Andrew?
No.
Just checking. This is pressure.
This is all for Andrew.
Yeah.
I'm not just asking for myself.
Okay, yeah, for everyone, for all of our listeners.
Yeah, whoever's listening.
I have one last interesting question before we close our podcast. It's about the boundaries. We want to know, in like teenage datings, what is like the boundaries? Like, is it hold hands, hugging, kissing maybe? What do you think?
Yeah, this one can be quite tricky because I tend to find that when you're a teenager, now I can look back, but when you're a teenager, you will never actually see this, right?
Yeah.
That you are so full of hormones raging inside of you all the time, and the young adults in the teens class actually would have heard me say this to them. There's so much hormones raging inside of you, not just sexually, but like just those hormones that are making you enrage perhaps quite quickly at your siblings or at your parents, and I think that's why if you are then able to communicate with one another and actually set that boundaries between the two of you, so then the two of you agree, that would obviously be best. However, it does, for sure that there are risks when it comes to teenage dating because, like I said, the hormonals raging everywhere, and I think the best way to overcome that is to stick to the basics. What is it that is not going to tempt you to go anything or anywhere further? And that might mean just holding hands, and that might mean hugs. Like, holding hands would do me no good. I'm a hug person. So, like from day dot, I'm a hug person. I can't just deal with holding hands. But being able to communicate that. And I think sometimes the struggle is that as a teenager, are you then able to communicate that? Do you even realize that is the level where, like, that is your limit before it pushes you too far into temptation? And that's why it's like always we have to sort of go back to the basics when it comes to giving out advice in terms of what are the limits. Sorry guys, we kind of have to stick to absolute minimums here. Why? Simply because many of you will not be able to withhold,
resist the temptation,
or resist the temptation. That's it, and that is the fact of life. And every single one of us would have gone through some sort of that temptation when we were going through our teenage years. And it's no different to them today, and I think it may be even worse for them today because everywhere is plastered with full of sexual items out there in the world, and it's just they're so full of it, whether or not it's in what they're watching or what they're scrolling through. I probably had less of it than they did, and so unfortunately they might not like my answer, but they'll have to go back to basics.
Yeah, definitely.
The wisest thing. today.
So yeah, thank you so much for today. We did have quite a bit of a chat, hey, about like relationships and dating. The couple things that stood out to me, I guess, from our discussion today was involvement of the community around you, the people around you, like your friends and your parents as well. I think because a lot of people tend to think that, I guess, like you, Sapap earlier, that you said that, dating is about me and your partner.
It's not actually like talking about myself, yeah? I'm just like giving examples. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Don't worry.
That's what I mean, like the example you mentioned. And also to know yourself a bit more, to know what to expect in the dating relationship. So yeah, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, really appreciate it.
Thank you, G.
Thank you.